Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's presentation, Connecting the Spots, Saving Snow Leopards, is brought to you by WWF's Program Manager for Mountains in Nepal and Global Snow Leopard Program Lead, Sheren Shrestha. A little bit more about our presenter. Sheren has been with WWF since 2016, designing and implementing snow leopard conservation programs across Nepal and globally. With over 16 years of experience at premier conservation institutions in India and Nepal, he specializes in community based conservation and human wildlife conflict co management while innovating grassroots solutions that improve both ecosystem health and community well being. Sheren brings expertise in building synergies among diverse stakeholders, engaging faith partners in conservation, and deploying results based management to achieve measurable conservation outcomes across the Himalayan region. Thank you for being here today, Sheren. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Brooke. Namaste, everyone. Thank you, NatHab, for having me, and thank you all for being here. As Brooke mentioned, I have been with WWF for about 9 years, working in Nepal, managing the mountain program, managing the snow leopard program. And just over 1 year, since last year, I've been supporting them as the lead for the snow leopard program globally. So you may know that snow leopards are found in 12 countries around the world, all in Asia, and Nepal is one of them. And WWF is currently working in 8 of these countries, working with the governments and communities to save snow leopards. And it's WWF's motto, which says "Together Possible." And that's the only way conservation is possible, working with different stakeholders. And we are obviously thankful for you all to be here. Yeah, so my presentation uh, is going to cover my journey in snow leopard conservation, my personal journey, but also talking about weaving into how we conserve snow leopards in Nepal, the challenges that we deal with, how we work with different communities, what we do, why we do, basically behind the scenes in conservation of snow leopards from Shey Phoksundo National Park, which is where most of my snow leopard conservation experience comes. But what you'll see is this is just a snapshot of a lot of conservation work being done around the world by WWF as well as a lot of other conservation institutions. A lot of it talks about working with communities, taking their priorities into account and ensuring that they undertake conservation, and we are just there in the background to help them. So this image is very close to my heart because this image was taken in 2018 as part of a baseline assessment in Shey Phoksundo National Park, which I'll be talking a little more about later. But when I placed this camera trap, uh, I was expecting an image where the snow leopard is facing towards us and there's a settlement in the background. But when we got this image, I was a little disappointed. But over time, I've come to appreciate this even more, which means it just reminds me that I'm an outsider. We are an outsider. And it's the communities that in snow leopards that have lived together for generations. And it's this traditional coexistence that we are trying to revive, that we're trying to strengthen, that we're trying to preserve because it's these communities that have been saving snow leopards for generations, and it's only them who can do this. Now my presentation will talk about whys and hows and why I feel these communities are so important and coexistence, preserving this coexistence is so important. My journey into snow leopard conservation was very serendipitous, so it was accidental. I am I was born in Kathmandu, in the city, in the capital city of Nepal, and brought up here. And then I did my education in India, studied a lot. I did a lot of my education in India. After finishing my master's, I decided to return to Nepal and I interned with WWF. That was where my conservation journey began. I interned with WWF on a tiger monitoring project in Bardia National Park in Western Nepal where I placed camera traps. Lived in the forest for several months at a stretch with a lot of our forest guards who taught me so much about conservation. But after my internship in Nepal, I moved back to India. And in India, I joined these two premier conservation organizations. I managed wildlife communications, beginning with the International Fund for Animal Welfare's Indian partner called Wildlife Trust of India, and then with Wildlife Conservation Society. With the International Fund for Animal Welfare, as the name suggests, which you might know, they are a welfare-based organization. And with the partner Wildlife Trust of India, I learned a lot about conservation and importance of individual animals. And with Wildlife Conservation Society, I learned a lot about science-based conservation. So these all provided foundations for my conservation journey. And since I was managing wildlife communications, I did not really imagine myself doing this work because I came back to Nepal, hoping to do some, continue with documenting some good stories from around the country, any good social work to kind of like ensure that more people get motivated to do some good work. But WWF happened accidentally. Somehow they trusted me, and I'm so glad that they did because it has just been an amazing privilege to be here and talk about all the things that I've been able to do. Obviously, I'll not be able to talk about all the things, but I'll be touching upon a few key topics. But also, please excuse my, uh, uh, my way of speaking, mainly because it's a bit late here, and I think I'm a little drowsy. So I'm hoping that I'll finish off the presentation quite early, and then we can have more conversations. So yeah, so my work in India gave me the foundation for wildlife communications, which I think provided the strong foundation for conservation. So what I'm doing, what I increasingly realize is conservation is all about communications, not all about communications, but mostly about communications, to correct myself. We are communicating with different stakeholders, understanding their issues, and trying to address and ensure that everyone benefits from it, right? So that's what we're trying to achieve. And with this background in communication, one of the benefits I feel that I had was to be able to understand, see other person's perspective, and in our case, perspectives of the snow leopard, perspectives of the communities, perspectives of the government, as well as different stakeholders, and bring it all together in this holistic project, which I will not be able to talk about all of it today, but I'll touch upon a few key things. So after I joined WWF in 2016, less than a year after that, I was party to an expedition to collar a snow leopard. And it was led by a young researcher. His name is Samundra. He's currently left our organization and is pursuing his PhD in US. So while on the journey, I was obviously very excited because this was the first time I would have any opportunity to see a snow leopard. But he sort of calmed me down. He told me that like he has had several experiences with snow leopard expeditions, and at least in one of them they were not able to collar capture any animal. So he just kept my expectations real. But obviously I was hopeful that we would see a snow leopard. So we reached the site where we were supposed to uh, begin our research, and we started placing traps, and we were ready, we were prepared to be there for about 45 days. But thankfully, luckily, on the third day, we captured this animal. The local community there who were there with us in all these research, we have citizen scientists, local community citizen scientists who help us out. And they named this animal Yalung after a mountain peak. And this was my first animal. Obviously, it was a bittersweet experience because seeing a majestic animal like this snow leopard caught in a trap was quite sad. But then obviously we released the animal safely, and we followed her, we tracked her, she moved to India, she came back to Nepal, settled down, moved about in these areas. So this research, such research provide foundation for snow leopard conservation. Now, one of the issues, this also indicates one of the global issues with snow leopard conservation. Snow leopard is one of the least studied of the big cats. And the entire global snow leopard conservation community essentially is trying to improve this understanding. Over the years, particularly in the last 10, 15 years, there's been a lot of research, there's been a lot of information that has come about. But still, one study has indicated, this study came about in 2016 and 17, about just about 3% of the snow leopard's home range has been studied, was studied till then. Obviously, this might have increased now. We don't have empirical data as to how much, by how much percentage, but still, this is to indicate that snow leopards haven't been studied as much as other big cats. So, so much so that even snow leopard population is very uncertain. The IUCN Red List estimates that there are at least about 2,700 to 3,400 snow leopards. It could be up to 10,000, but these global estimates are still based on expert guesses. But there's been a lot of studies recently, and WWF has been privileged to be a part of these studies. I mean, recently, Nepal released the national snow leopard estimation, snow leopard numbers, and we were able to coordinate that for Nepal government, bringing together all different stakeholders, different researchers, conservation institutions who had done a lot of good work. We brought the data together, worked with them, and generated this data of snow leopard population in Nepal. So I'm going to show you a short video clip which shows what went on. So this is just one example of our work, and this happened recently. And Nepal released the snow leopard population in April this year. But like Nepal, our offices in India, in Bhutan, in Mongolia, in China, in Pakistan, as well as some Central Asian countries, are working with governments and communities to estimate snow leopard population. But also, I mean, other than these high profile population researches, high intensive resource based researches, we also have a lot of grounded research that is done. And that is where I'm coming to. So my experience in snow leopard conservation comes mostly from Shey Phoksundo National Park, all of it from Nepal, but mostly from this region. So if you can follow my cursor, Shey Phoksundo National Park falls in the western region of northwestern region of Nepal around here. And to give you an idea how far this is from, currently I am in Kathmandu in the capital city, and I'm planning to visit Shey Phoksundo National Park very soon. And I can barely do 1 or 2 trips per year to my project sites, mainly because from here to reach this point, which is Shey Monastery, this is a 9th century old monastery, which gives the national park its name. This it would take me like 2 flights and 6 days of walk, 6 days of trekking to reach this site. So my first foray to Shey Phoksundo National Park was in 2018. I was assigned by my organization to design a conservation project. And to do so, to begin with, what I did was we were planning to do a baseline assessment, trying to understand what is going on, what is the circumstances. We know that obviously there were some conflict issues. We knew that there are some challenges, but we needed contextual information so that we could design a project that would suit, that would match the needs on ground. So other than the challenge of reaching the landscape itself, another challenge that we faced was issues with climate. So to reach this point, which is about 4,300 meters above sea level, we had to cross a pass, high mountain pass, which is about 5,300 meters. And we got information that that pass was covered in snow and there was no way of reaching there. But we had already somehow communicated with our citizen scientists, community members from different parts of this region to come and meet us here, and we needed to get there. Thankfully, we had a very able lady colleague from Shey Phoksundo National Park itself. Her name is Chiring. She was there, as well as a lot of local community members were there in our team moving with me. So I completely relied on their judgment, trying to basically I needed to get there obviously, but then I relied on their judgment, their decisions to take me there or not take me there. Thankfully, on our way, we had a good omen. I had my first wild snow leopard sighting during this trip, and that was just amazing, mainly because we had just left the settlement and it was the first night we were camping. We had just pitched our tents, and I was discussing with the national park guards. So, forest guards, who we call game scouts here, you might know them as rangers. So I was discussing with them about the issues there of conservation and, like, what might be needed for to help us help them, that sort of thing. All of a sudden, one lady in our team, she started screaming snow leopard. And for a while, it took me a while obviously to locate the animal. Now my eyes are not as good as hers, but finally when I managed to see the snow leopard, it was already dark, but I did manage to capture this image. This animal, basically, we had a lot of yaks, horses, to carry our stuff as well as ourselves. So this animal just calmly walked between all of our animals, crossed the ridge, climbed onto a top of another ridge, went and did some scrape marks, and vanished into the other side of the cliff. Me and Chiring followed this animal. We tried to see if I could get a better shot, and obviously, like, Chiring was racing ahead and I was struggling behind with my camera, but I didn't get any other shots. So I got some other shots also from the same position, but we could not find the animal again. So other than the research itself, these journeys itself are such an enriching experience. So when I had a conversation with the lady who saw the snow leopard first, I asked her, oh, how did you manage to do this? And one of the things she said was, it was very logical, right? So while I was in conversation with the colleagues and some other colleagues, Sharing was helping arrange the camp and everything, this lady kept a watch on the animals. She had her horses there, and obviously, like, she was like keeping an eye on the animals. And what she told me was, she saw that all the animals had their heads turned to one direction. That's when she looked at that direction and found and saw that this animal was in that region. So that forms a basis to our project as well, because what we realize is the role of women in conservation, particularly in this landscape, which was further reinforced during our baseline assessment, where we found that a lot of herding responsibility is taken by women of this region. Yeah. So with this good omen, we had a good night's sleep, and next day we reached this high mountain pass, which is 5,300 meters, as I mentioned. I was completely, like I said, I had completely left it up to the local people, local community to decide what we do. And I'm glad that they figured out a way. And this was the way we crossed this pass and reached the other side to Shey Monastery. We had to offload all the animals with the luggages, with all our belongings, all our research equipment. And you can see the animals, we let them move ahead first, and then rolled all the equipment down, then went down, collected all the equipment, and then carried on in our journey to reach Shey Monastery, where we met a lot of our citizen scientists who had come from different settlements around that region. And we met them there. We stayed there for 2 week two not sorry 2 days, 2 to 3 days, learning from them about the conservation issues and teaching them about these baseline surveys that we had designed. The survey design itself and the preparation itself had taken us 1 year, and I was like really relieved that we could somehow reach here. Although we did lose a few camera traps which got damaged, some GPS that got damaged, but we got a lot of work done during this trip. So what happened here was, we had 2 3 days of training, and we planned and we spread out. All of us spread out to different regions to try and understand not just about the population of snow leopards and their prey, but for me personally, what was more interesting, what was something that I was like really looking forward to, was understanding the issues faced by the community. So we had surveys planned for herders, we had discussions planned with communities, with males, with females, with with both genders, and we had some household interviews planned. All of those were rolled out from this after this training. So as I mentioned earlier, these citizen scientists were critical not just to feed information to us, but get a lot of information from communities all around to help design our project. Now, this baseline assessment was done in 2018, and it still forms the basis of our work. Since then, obviously, we've had a lot more assessments, we've learned a lot, but one thing remains the same: the communities. They remain the center of our project, they remain the heart and soul of what we do, mainly because snow leopards and these communities have been living together for generations. And through their beliefs and values and their cultures, these snow leopards and the communities have been coexisting. As I mentioned earlier, what we're trying to find is what is breaking this coexistence, what might cause breakage of this coexistence, and how might we be able to kind of repair these breakages and strengthen that bond that the community had with snow leopards, right? So these communities form a critical part, and understanding them became very crucial for us. So this entire baseline assessment was that. And there's some very interesting information we got. I'm just providing some highlights here, which I'll be talking a little more detail about. So one of the things we found out was the community was highly dependent on livestock, and because there was snow leopards in very high densities, they also faced very high conflict losses, which informed us that conservation management would need to be a key priority. Because what was going on was the communities were facing losses, but they were obviously expressing anger. So what you can see here, of the 124 herders we interviewed, 96% informed that they had faced losses. And we also found that about 20% indicated that they knew that the snow leopards were being killed in retribution. Another thing we found out here was also, there's government, right? We work with the government, and the government has provisions to provide relief, to provide support to these communities. But what we found out from this region was only 9% of them, 9% of the killings were reported to the community, to the government, and none of them had received relief. Now, there was a challenge. I mean, the government had relief provisions, but as anywhere, government provisions need evidence and proper documentation and all those processing, right? So the communities were not able to process. The national park were understaffed, under resourced to be able to kind of do this proactively. So basically, there was this huge divide. National Park wanted to conserve the snow leopards. Obviously, the community would have been supportive, but because they were not getting any support, they had this anger towards the government, towards the institution of conservation, including institutions like WWF for that matter. Because when we speak about conserving snow leopards for the communities, obviously they have been doing that for a long time. But when they hear us talking about snow leopards alone, it does not make sense to them, especially when snow leopards come and like attack their entire livelihoods. But yeah, so that was an opportunity. That visit was an opportunity for us to also explain to them that our priority was not just snow leopards, and we could not conserve snow leopards by focusing on snow leopards, but focusing on priorities that these communities had. So one priority obviously was conflict management. The second priority we realized was, since the community was dependent on livestock so much, and the livestock was dependent on these natural rangelands, which was degenerating or degrading, unless the rangeland quality would be conserved, eventually communities would face more hardships. And the third thing we were exploring was also trying to understand, sustainability is one aspect, but now in this globalized world, all of us have aspirations, right? So we were also trying to understand communities' aspirations and what might be an opportunity to preserve this landscape and help community meet these aspirations. And I'm so glad I was like talking to Brooke a little earlier about NatHab adventures and how this contributes to conservation. So basically, I think a lot of conservation groups are looking at tourism to preserve these natural habitats by providing community with economic returns for preservation. Yeah, so that's something that we found could be an opportunity for Shey Phoksundo National Park as well. So these information that we got from the baseline provided us a snapshot of what was going on in Shey National Park, a snapshot of global threats facing snow leopards. There are studies that have indicated that globally around the world, around 220 to 450 snow leopards are killed or removed each year, either for poaching or in retribution. Their habitats are degrading, their habitats are being fragmented. Their prey decline are also causing threats to snow leopards. And another major thing, the climate vagaries, right? Climate change impacts are showing up in snow leopard habitats. Some studies have indicated that these snow leopard landscapes are warming twice as faster than other regions. So these were all threats that we were trying to address, but in our own little sphere of influence in Shey National Park. In terms of conflict, one of the things I mentioned earlier is these communities have been living with snow leopards, so they have dealt with conflicts throughout their existence. But one of the things that frustrated them most was these instances of surplus killing. So you can see this incident happened one night by one snow leopard when a single snow leopard entered a corral where these goats and sheep were kept, and over 50 animals were killed in one night. Yeah, what we're trying to do now is to create a bridge between these communities and the national park, the government's provisions, to ensure that both of them, the national park's provision of supporting the communities and communities' need for that support, we were trying to create that bridge. And this also becomes a bridge for the first partnership, because if we need to work with certain stakeholders, I think it's important for us to understand their priorities. And this was the key priority for the community. So, this is a short video clip from that same incident where so many animals were killed in one night. So, such instances of surplus killing are all too common in Dolpa, where snow leopards are found in high densities, and there is livestock also in high densities. And so, what are we doing to help the communities and work with the communities to address this? One, obviously, is simple, is to not let the snow leopard enter these corrals where people keep their livestock. So, improving these corrals. So, as you can see, this is just one traditional corral where we have used a very simple solution, and it's being done by a lot of conservation organizations around the world. So, basically, ensuring that we leave no entry point for the snow leopard to enter so that the animals are safe. Now, in a place like say Phoksundo National Park, where about 2,000 households, most of them reliant on livestock, in all these remote regions, it's very resource intensive and time consuming for us to support each and every household, particularly because they also don't live in one village alone. So they have this practice of rotational grazing, right? So they move with the animals, and they need to safeguard the animals all around. So one of the things what we've been trying is following this principle, this analogy, let's say, rather than giving a person a fish, teaching them how to fish. Using that analogy, what we're trying to do is we will not be able to support each one of them unless we have unlimited resources or a huge amount of resources to help them make these improved corals. So what we parallelly started doing was training the local communities on making these mesh wire nets so that they could themselves uh, help themselves. So this is something that we're trying. Obviously it's taking long because there are issues of transportation, there are issues of logistics, and there's also issues of communication. But this is something that we've been trying, and wherever these improved corals have been well executed, there have been no instances of surplus killing, including in this particular uh, improved coral. So other than this improving the coral to prevent these losses, to prevent snow leopards from killing the livestock, we understand that it's not in our interest and in our possibility to stop all killings. Yeah. So what we are also doing is, since the Nepal government provides these relief schemes, we WWF has been supporting the community with a livestock insurance scheme. There has been a very interesting model from another area done by some of the leaders from our organizations, who've created this model of community run livestock insurance schemes to provide communities suffering from conflicts to help themselves. So it's a simple fund that is created and managed and run by the community, so that whoever faces losses gets some bit of relief. So that model has actually helped ensure zero retaliatory killing in this one particular region called Kanchenjunga Conservation Area, which falls in the northeasternmost part of Nepal, which is where WWF, that was the first community run protected area established with the support of WWF. And we replicated that model here in Western Nepal in Phoksundo National Park. But during this time, in 2018, when we went, Nepal government already had that provision of relief. So what we instead did was use this livestock insurance scheme to help the community access these government schemes, government funds. And you can see this image here. We got a lot of support, of course, from the government officials, who taught these community members as to the processing processes, right? You need to document, you need to file in applications, you need to get evidence, you need to get certifications from different authorities. So we work with the national park authorities, the government, to train the local community leaders, our youth citizen scientists, on helping victim households to file for these claims. And here we have certain citizen scientists who have received the claims from the national park, received the money from the government, and is providing that relief to the community. So, other than this work on the ground, obviously, we've also been working with the government authorities to kind of help improve these policies. So, these take into account the circumstances, the challenges facing these landscapes. So, here you have at the bottom, we have our senior advisor currently leading this entire meeting. He comes from the government. He led the government, he worked in the government system for a very long time, was the chief wildlife warden of various national parks across Nepal. So he led this conversation, and we had government representatives from the local communities, local community leaders, and the conservation authorities of Nepal discuss policies which help improve the policies in the relief policy, particularly. So, conflict management, as I mentioned, was a priority for the community, and it helped bridge this gap. Right now, what was increasingly happening was, with the community receiving relief, they realized that, oh yes, national park is there to help us, and they and the government were getting closer, and the trust was building. So building on that, what we are now trying to explore is the second aspect that I earlier spoke about, the rangelands. Now these rangelands have also been a bone of contention. The national park allows extraction of certain resources, and the communities also use these rangelands to graze their livestock, but also to extract these resources. But due to various circumstances, the governance here was sort of breaking apart. So what we realized, and there's also been actually some conflicts between government, between park and people regarding these rangelands where people have lost their lives. But what we realized here was, these rangelands were important for the national park authorities and for the communities. So if, instead of this becoming a reason for conflict, what if it became a unifier which brought together these two important stakeholders and worked together for the benefit of them all? Which means, if the rangelands are conserved, the national park's priority of conserving is also met, and the community's need for sustainable use is also met, and this also adds into the revenue of the national park. So what we started doing was, we tried to understand along the way as we went along, what were the issues facing this rangeland and how was it managed earlier. Why was it managed for so many years, so many generations, and now we're facing the problem? We tried to understand these issues and realized that there was a breakage in governance. There was a big breakage in governance structure that came about, and it wasn't for us to blame anyone, right? What was happening was these changes were happening organically around the world. The globalization impacts were being seen out here also. And because of that, the communities which were earlier governing these rangelands were sort of taking a step back, and the national park and the other government authorities responsible were not able to reach because they don't have the resources or the abilities to reach all these remote landscapes. They are even today highly under resourced. So we worked, so my conversation, this gentleman, he's a faith healer. uh, he's called Amchi Sherab Tenzing Lama. During one of the collaring expeditions, uh, as I mentioned earlier, it could take like, up to 45 days. So during one of the collaring expeditions in Dolpa, I had an opportunity to have conversation with him, and I realized that he had so much knowledge about sustainable management of these rangelands. But then there was no, his knowledge was not being used. So as we further explored what could be done, we realized that we could form a co-management model which could revive these traditional leadership under the legal ownership and legal platforms provided by the national park. And that is what we are working towards. We conducted a lot of consultations, trying to understand the kind of knowledge that community has and the interest that the community would have to conserve, and also trying to understand what might be the limitations and how might this all fit in within the current government framework of management uh, under the National Park Act of Nepal. So this is one of the consultations, and this gentleman, he's there in one of the movies called Caravan, which is based in this region. He passed away recently, but before that we got an opportunity, and I was like fortunate to have this interaction with him. Obviously he could not converse in Nepali, so we had our citizen scientist here who helped with the interviews and everything, and gave us so much information about what could be done for rangeland co-management. So one of the things now we are working towards is creating this co-management model where the national park authorities provide the legal backing and enforcement backing, and communities use their presence and knowledge on ground to work with the national park to protect and sustainably use these rangelands. So this is an effort that I mean, obviously the discussions have been going on for several years, and we are now going to start work. I'm planning to visit the park very soon and continue working on this. So this has multiple benefits, right? So this will increase and improve communities and park earnings, and will also help solidify park and people relationship. It will help revive this traditional knowledge which has helped conserve these landscapes for so long. And it also provides us opportunities to embed modern knowledge, including management knowledge that our national park and the government authorities have. And there is also a linkage to healthcare, considering that we are engaging these faith healers. So this rangeland becomes our second priority, which we are currently working towards. But uh, coming back to the aspect of sustainability, so far it's all about sustainability. But as of today, what we also know is there's a lot of aspirations for the community. And the community, one of the things we realized was, obviously tourism can be an opportunity for the community to make a good earning, and this earning might motivate the community to preserve this landscape. But we realize that this will only happen if the majority of the community benefits. If only a few benefit, then why would the majority have the incentive to preserve this landscape? So we needed to see how many community members were benefiting from tourism. And during our 2018 baseline, we realized that there were very few of them who were benefiting. So if we could increase that number, we possibly would create a model where the national park's natural integrity and the cultural integrity would be preserved, and the community would earn by selling tangible cultural products and intangible natural products, natural heritage, let's say, that would be a model that would be an ideal situation where both the nature, culture, community, as well as the visitors benefit, right? So that's an opportunity that we're exploring. But during the baseline, we realized that the communities were obviously angry even at the uh, tourism community, let's say, trekking community, tourism community, because they were not seeing any benefits. What they would see is a lot of trekking companies coming in, bringing in trekkers, and bringing in all the resources from outside, and the communities were not benefiting. So what we did was, after that baseline in 2018, around 2019 or 20, we organized a discussion in Kathmandu, where we brought in invited all the major trekking companies who were dealing trips in this region, trying to understand why were they not able to contribute to communities well-being. And obviously, like, if you look at the tourism companies, for them this is like a goose that lays golden eggs. So they do understand that, and they are responsible, many of them are responsible, and would like to contribute back, as nathab as nathab does. But unfortunately, what we learned there was, they said that obviously when they bring in trekkers, when they bring in tourists, committing to provide them luxury, committing to provide them food services, if they rely on the community which is not organized and unable to provide these foods and services, basically they would not be able to deliver on their promises to their clients. So that we saw as a major gap. So what we realized, what we needed to do, our project could contribute towards, is to increase the community's capacity to help the community address the needs of the trekking companies. So while we supported, so we started supporting a lot of livelihood activities. So you can see some of them getting trained as, trekking guides, some of them being trained to, in their traditional artwork, so that they could create these curios that could be sold to tourists. Some of them being trained on these traditional tailoring practices. So with this, we could, let's say, for lack of better analogy, killing two birds with one stone, let's say. So I'm sorry to use this, but basically that, right? So with one activity, what we could do was, the community could benefit, but also the cultural preservation would be ensured. Their traditional knowledge would also be preserved through these practices. So this is something that we're exploring. Obviously, we haven't completely achieved our goals. This is something we're in the process, but yeah, this is something that we are hoping that pays back to the community. So another thing we realized we could do was help build this community into a cohesive network. So we helped create this youth tourism coordination committee, who would coordinate with different trekking agencies, and that's the vision right now. So we have formed the committee, and this committee is basically, one of the things that they've done is created a waste management strategy for this entire landscape, bringing together different authorities, local governments, district authorities, the national park authorities, as well as the communities, to create this waste management strategy, which was endorsed last year. So that implementation process is ongoing. But basically, what we did was create this youth group, which could facilitate and organize tourism in such a way that the trekking companies would get their needs from the local communities, and the local communities could benefit equitably. That is the vision, and that is where we're working towards. So these are just some examples of our work. There's a series that we documented called Allies Not Enemies, which talks about different aspects of our conservation work. So it includes, disease aspect, it includes the rangeland aspect, the conflict aspects, engaging with faith leaders, different aspects of conservation that we're doing in Shey Phoksundo National Park. So this 10-part series, if you get an opportunity, please do visit. There's just like few minutes for each episode. All of it would, I think you'd be able to finish it in less than an hour. So this gives you a holistic idea of the different kind of work that we're doing. So one of the key things, as I mentioned, is within our project, communities' well-being, communities meeting communities' aspirations and helping them grow is a critical part of our project. And it's not just like, we can't take all the credit. It's all due to them. They understand the opportunities, and they have been able to contribute to so much. So from the image that I showed earlier, I just wanted to showcase where all of these people stand now. Many of them still work with us. We have this lady Chering who I spoke about. She's running her own conservation institution and helping communities build more corals. We have one leader here who got elected as unopposed as the local government, their local ward chairperson. We have this particular person who's helping the communities in the conflict management aspect even today. We have this person Sonam Wangdi, who helped in our project discover wild yak, rediscover wild yak from Phoksundo National Park. Dorje Gurung here, who helped with the rangeland co-management. And this gentleman here, he was a national park staff. He's retired now, but his daughter got scholarship from the project, and she studied conflict management in one of the project sites in our region, and we didn't know about this. But later I got to meet her and found out that her study has indicated that the communities indicated from that particular region where she studied, about 50% of the community informed that they had received relief. Now, in 2018, when we started, it was 0%. In 2022, at least 50% acknowledged that they had received relief, and 80% of them expressed satisfaction. Obviously, that's a challenge that, the sustainability of these relief access is a challenge that we are constantly working towards. But these are some progress that we've been able to kind of like, I've been really, really privileged to be a part of. Now, obviously, like I'm talking about my story, but conservation in Shey Phoksundo National Park with WWF does not begin with me, and obviously will not end with me. And within Nepal, of course, within Nepal and within the world, there are many people contributing to conservation. So I have some images here. This under the WWF logo, under Together Possible, WWF's motto, we have a lot of WWF staff members present here who contribute in different ways. We have this person here, Yeshi Lama, who passed away in a helicopter crash. If you might know, in 2006, Nepal had a tragedy where about 24 individuals, including many senior conservationists, including about 6, 7 WWF senior members, passed away. And she was one of them. I didn't get to meet her, but in my project site, I see imprints of her work and I get inspired, and I'm continuing that. So she worked with people and plants. She came out with this amazing medicinal plants of Dolpo, and we using that document, we using that foundation to carry on her legacy and continue conservation. This person here below her is Samundra, who I mentioned about, the researcher who's studying in US right now doing his PhD. Then we have on her right, we have Dr. Ghana, who is the country representative for WWF Nepal, who was one of the key persons to establish that livestock insurance scheme that I spoke about, which ensured zero retaliatory killing in Kanchenjunga Conservation Area. And he played a key role in establishing this community-run protected area in Nepal, and he's running our organization. He's also the known as the WWF Network Snow Leopard Champion. But we have a lot of team members working around the world. You can see this image here. We have people from China, India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, and obviously a lot of Western countries, including US, UK, all of whom are contributing to conservation, because without resources, we would not be able to do all of the things that I said, that I spoke about, would be basically just conversation without funds, right? So these offices have been critical in raising funds. And we also like work closely with the Global Snow Leopard Ecosystem Protection Program, which is a global body that works to bring together the entire world, including all the range country governments, all the institutions working together on conservation. So here we have our team in this meeting in Kyrgyzstan that happened this year. This is a group of conservationists and researchers and institutions that contributed to Nepal's snow leopard conservation, population assessment. So obviously, this is not only WWF, but a lot of non-WWF people who contribute to conservation. And here, in one of the conferences, I got to meet a lot of people from Mongolia who are not part of WWF, but part of different institutions working on conservation. And yeah, so basically what I mean to say is snow leopard conservation is a huge task. and it is not possible in a small working in a silo. So we are trying to increasingly work together, come together, learn from each other, help each other, and work together to create a world where snow leopards and people continue to coexist and benefit from each other. I stop my presentation here. Thank you so much, Brooke. Back to you.
Oh, Sheren, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking us through all of that amazing information. And as we were talking before we logged on, everyone, I would love to throw a new film out to you. Shering Lama, who Sheren brought up multiple times, she's an amazing conservationist, and I've had a chance to meet her. And an amazing film just came out about her called Snow Leopard Sisters. So please, if you want some Saturday watching, go out and check out that brand new film about her specifically. All right, everyone. Well, we have some time for some Q&A here. So please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat feature of your control panel, and I will direct them through to Sheren. So, all right, this is a really good question. Could you expand upon what are snow leopards' natural prey when everything is nice and balanced? What do they normally hunt?
Thank you so much for this question. So, in what we are realizing is obviously they have wild prey, but they've also appeared to be always dependent on livestock. And these communities and the snow leopards have been living together. So, in Nepal, in this project site, we have something called a blue sheep, which is the major prey for snow leopards. But there's also this, so basically, mountain goats and mountain sheeps, these are the major prey, but they also feed opportunistically on smaller mammals, birds, rodents like marmots, even birds for that matter. But yeah, but we're also realizing from different parts of the world, there have been studies that have indicated that livestock also forms a part of their diet. And so, yeah, if you look at wild prey, you have these mountain goats, wild mountain goats, and sheep and antelopes, perhaps, and even these small mammals. But even livestock forms a part of their natural prey. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that does. Thank you so much. No, that was great. It was great. Um, oh, this is an interesting one. And since this has happened very recently, you can let us know if you have any further information or not. But in headlines, it was actually quite surprising. I think I saw this one too, that the Trump administration might possibly dedicate $25 million for snow leopard conservation in Nepal. Do you have any information about that? And if it would go through, what it might help?
I think this information came about with the article in, I'm not sure, New York Times or one of the major journals in the US, right? So we got that information from there as well. So we don't know. We don't know for sure, but if something like that happens, then it would be a huge, huge win for snow leopard conservation in Nepal. If you think about it, like, Nepal basically is a small country. So if you look at global snow leopard range, globally snow leopards are found in about 2 million square kilometers. Yeah, their range is supposed to be around 1.8 to 2 million square kilometers. And Nepal just has about 30,000 square kilometers of snow leopard habitat. Yeah. Within that, we have about 400 snow leopards, which could be about 5 to 10% of the global snow leopard population, which means strategically that sort of funding coming to protect it would mean within a small landscape we would be able to secure 5 to 10% of the global snow leopard population, and it would be a huge help for us to help the communities. But I'm not sure if this is coming or how is it coming, but I think that's a great direction that the US government has always been a huge support of conservation throughout. Like, we've had a lot of conservation projects that have benefited a lot of community members, a lot of nature has benefited from US investments earlier. And if something like this happens for snow leopard, then I think this is one of the biggest wins that we would have for snow leopard conservation, not just in Nepal but globally, because this would mean protecting 5 to 10% of snow leopard population globally.
Absolutely. Gosh, that would be, oh, that goes through. I'm just getting all excited just thinking about it. And the other species that was listed were polar bears. So some
Yep,
of
yep.
our very climate risk species. They could get a lot of help from that, which would be incredible. Oh, someone just asked about the film. It was called Snow Leopard Sisters, and it was featuring Shearing Llama. So, yes, if you want to watch that this weekend, I highly recommend that. Um, Great. So, could you talk about maybe a little bit of snow leopard conservation as a whole? Are there other areas where there's a lot of snow leopard conservation happening, and what has been discovered in those regions?
Mm, yes, definitely. As I mentioned earlier, it's a huge landscape, right? Snow leopard is found in 12 countries. So, a lot of good work being done by a lot of different institutions. Obviously, I'm able to talk about WWF. Our work is going on in Mongolia, in India, in Bhutan. So, essentially, the issues are similar. Everywhere, snow leopard faces threats from poaching, faces threats of retaliatory killings, and faces threats of habitat degradation, trade decline, and climate and infrastructures not built in a manner that is friendly to nature. Yeah. So these are all issues that are there, and there are a lot of good work being done around the snow leopard range by a lot of different institutions as well as individuals. So I don't know if this answers your question, but definitely the simple answer is yes. And even now, despite this investment, despite this thing, there's a lot more opportunity to expand, because I think we are still not covering a huge amount of snow leopard areas with sufficient conservation measures. I can give you example in Nepal. This Shey Phoksundo National Park is something that we've been struggling. We're raising funds, and we are thankful to a lot of our supporters and our offices around the world who've been able to help us raise funds. So we're able to continue these activities, yeah, in Shey Phoksundo. But if you look at the entire 30,000 square kilometer of snow leopard landscapes in Nepal, intensive work might be going on in just about 10,000 square kilometers, 5 to 10,000 square kilometers. Yeah. So that means that there's still opportunity to invest a lot more to kind of like carry on conservation work. So there's a lot more to do, but I think around the world you will find examples of good work being done in these critical sites, which is ready to be scaled up, scaled out, and expanded around the world, around the snow leopard range. Needs to be done, because otherwise we would just be saving pockets, and that does not work for species like snow leopards, which needs huge range, which need to move, and anyway, for populations to survive, they need to have this genetic transfers, right? Which means we need to work at landscape level, we need to work at transboundary levels. These are all efforts that are going on, but obviously everything is limited by resources and time. And one of the things is, if you're able to generate resources, I think there'll be a lot more that can be scaled up and scaled out by many institutions, including WWF.
Yes, so inspiring. I love how much work there has been recently on snow leopards and how much more I feel like marketing and news that they are getting, which is awesome. Speaking of pockets of landscapes, could you elaborate a little further? Where are snow leopards found? Are they mostly in uninhabited areas, or are they found commonly near people and livestock?
That's a very nice question. I really like the question. I'm so sorry I did not cover this in my presentation. But yeah, so basically, snow leopards are found in Asian high mountains. So, high mountains of Asia. So, there are 12 countries snow leopards are found. This includes China is obviously one of the biggest snow leopard range countries. India has a huge range. Even Russia, Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all these countries, Pakistan, yeah. So there are 12 countries that have snow leopards, and they're found mostly in the mountainous regions. As their name suggests, snow, they're leopards of the snow, so to say. Generally, in most of these landscapes, snow leopards are found in at altitudes above 3,000 meters to 4,500 meters. But in places like Mongolia, which is cold, being in the northern hemisphere, even though the altitude is just about 900, 800, 900 meters above sea level, snow leopards are found there. In Nepal, there has been a record of the highest altitude where a snow leopard has been found, about 5,800 meters in Kanchenjunga Conservation Area. That's the kind of landscape. So these are mountainous, extreme mountainous terrains, let's say, cold, really rugged, really rugged landscapes. If you see Nepal's mountains, I don't know if you've seen these documentaries on Nepal's mountaineering. There are some on Netflix also. You will see what kind of landscapes snow leopards are found in. But with respect to them and communities, so what we need to increasingly appreciate is that these communities and snow leopards, as with communities and other species for that matter, we always lived together. Humans lived with wildlife. Humans were a part of this nature. Through all this time, we were a part of this nature. We benefited from nature. And even our cultures, for that matter, understands the need to protect these nature. So basically these are not excluded. So it's not like snow leopards use certain areas and people use certain areas. These are areas where snow leopards and people may be found together. The landscapes that snow leopards prey rely on, the rangelands that I spoke about, are productive rangelands which is used by people to graze their livestock, which means there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of, basically, it's not uh, like a split. There's no split. They live together, and this is what has been going on for generations, and it can happen. It's about increasing people's understanding of how did we earlier live with snow leopards, or how can we use our modern knowledge as well as traditional knowledge to continue coexisting with snow leopards and other wildlife for that matter. If you see a lot of the other protected areas, they might seem, particularly let's say tiger bearing protected areas in Nepal, in South Asia, they are, there's a clear divide. There's a national park where people don't live inside. Unlike that, in snow leopard landscapes, people and snow leopards, even in Phoksundo National Park, within the bounds of the national park, there are communities living. So when I speak of the Shey Monastery, that's right bang in the middle of Phoksundo National Park. So it's not, in case of snow leopards particularly, the communities and the snow leopards continue to live together. And that's something that we're trying to preserve further.
Thank you so much for that explanation. That was very insightful. I really appreciate that response. Well, Sharon, we have reached the top of the hour here. So, as much as I don't want to end this presentation, it's probably time. So, I will turn it to you for any last closing comments.
Yeah, well, nothing much. Once again, thank you so much, Brooke and NatHab team, for having me here. And also, thank you all for your interest and your interesting questions and everything. And as I mentioned earlier, like, conservation is something that cannot be done by individuals, institutions like WWF without the support. I think one of the key things why we are able to do what we do, WWF as well as other conservation organizations, is because of the support provided by a lot of people who may not directly be engaged in conservation. These may be financial support, of course, but even voluntary service support when opportunities exist, or in any in-kind support or any of that sort. And if something like, like, obviously it all depends on funds. And one of the key things what we need to understand, and one thing that I always question myself, is why am I conserving snow leopards? I'm not conserving snow leopards. I realize that I'm not conserving snow leopards for snow leopards alone. I'm not conserving snow leopards for nature. That is there, of course. But without nature, without snow leopards, what happens is this entire ecosystem that we rely on. We all need fresh water, right? Fresh water comes from this natural environment that we've been blessed with. So unless we save these natural ecosystems in which snow leopards, tigers, or these flagship species can help protect the entire ecosystems, right? So unless we do that, our own survival is at risk. So I think it's important for us all to appreciate that this conservation effort is not for animals, not for species alone. It has benefits and it has implications on our own survival, on our own well-being. Our generations, we're seeing a lot of things change, and there will be a lot of opportunities from technology, but also technology for what? If we are not able to find water, if we are not able to produce water, basically our survival will be jeopardized. And that jeopardy can be mitigated by preserving nature. And for that, I think everyone needs to care about conservation and everyone needs to support in their own way. And I'm thankful if you've been supporting, for your interest, for your support. And yeah, hope we get to meet sometime, and hope you get to travel to these landscapes and see snow leopards sometime, and appreciate the species and the landscape and the people and their cultures when you visit these areas. Thank you, Brooke. Back to you.
Amen. That was great. Couldn't have said that better myself. I completely agree. All of us, let's book some flights. Let's go to India and Nepal and see these snow leopards and help protect this beautiful landscape. Well, Sheren, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us today. And I would like to thank everybody who tuned in. If you're interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab, give us a call at 800-543-8917 or send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are more than happy to help you. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and the replay will be available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.